History tells of missionaries whose lives changed the face of a nation, while others have fulfilled the Great Commission closer to home in less conspicuous ways, some of them intentionally inconspicuous. In the quest to fulfill the Great Commission, many ministers have had to conceal their work in order to preserve it. Some even formulated secret operations, serving their congregation not only in word, but in covert deed. This was the case in our first story. Kjeldgaard Jensen, a Lutheran pastor from the small town of Kjeldgaard, Denmark, operated his secret mission during the Nazi occupation of 1940.
When Nazi Germany invaded Denmark and proceeded to occupy the territory, there was little the Danish government could do. The occupation was carried out so quickly, the Danish military didn't have time to respond. The Nazis wanted to use Denmark as an example of an easy and efficient occupation. The Danish government, having little to say in the matter, was forced to accept a collaboration. The elected Danish government continued functioning, but under Nazi supervision. The Danish police remained under the authority of the Danes, and as a result, the citizens were less resistant to the Nazis than in other countries, such as Norway or France. But there were still isolated attempts to resist the Nazi occupation, especially within the Danish army. Intelligence officers immediately started funneling information to the Allies. Soon after this so-called peaceful occupation of Denmark, the Nazis banned the Danish government and ordered the police to arrest its fellow citizens. The members of the government who escaped went underground and bolstered the resistance. A clandestine newspaper called Land og Folk was distributed illegally across the country, right under the nose of its occupying regime.
As time went on, insurgent groups worked secretly to oppose the Nazis. Sabotage missions were carried out by rebel groups who used weapons smuggled in by the Allies, and on some occasions, attempted assassinations of Nazi officers. As the war went on, the Nazis began planning the deportation to Nazi concentration camps of the 7,800 or so Jews in Denmark. Danish leaders would not stand for this. They encouraged their citizens to protect and hide their fellow Danes.
Within the church, Danish bishops rejected anti-Jew propaganda. They told their congregations that Jesus was a Jew, and the command of Christ to love one another also applied to the Jews. This message spread throughout the country, and the Danish citizens began to offer help to their Jewish brothers and sisters. Throughout the occupation, Danish Christians hid Jewish citizens in their homes and facilitated underground transportation to neutral Sweden. The Danes put their ingenuity to use, taking Jews in ambulances, faking injury or sickness. Even funeral processions were used as a guise to conceal the illegal ferrying. The effort was remarkably successful, but not without risk. If caught harboring a Jew, many Nazi officers were commanded to shoot the resistors on sight.
On October 3rd, 1943, Pastor Jensen read a letter from church officials encouraging Christians to help the Jews. Pastor Jensen's congregation responded heroically by sheltering over 1,300 Jews. They hid them in floors, attics, barns, and shops.
The small town of Kjeldgaard, Denmark, where Pastor Jensen was stationed, is just 10 miles across the Kattegat Strait from Sweden. So naturally, it became a gathering point for escaping Jews to Sweden via boat. During the operation, Jensen's church members helped purchase fuel for the local fishermen to carry the refugees the 10 miles to cross to Sweden. The fishing boats traveled late at night and at times were hindered by bad weather or German patrol boats. Some ships were swamped and sank, drowning the refugees. But the church members continued their efforts. They established connections and worked closely with the Danish resistance. Some of the church members were arrested, imprisoned, sent to concentration camps, and shot to death for assisting the Jews.
Hundreds of families were hidden and protected just long enough to get them to safety. By October 5th, 500 Jews were hiding in Kjeldgaard, awaiting ferry to Sweden. They realized boats would be the fastest and safest way to get the Jews out of Denmark. The townspeople raised today's dollar equivalent of $150,000 to incentivize the captains of nearby boats to risk the voyage.
When the boat was at half capacity, the captain, realizing the risk of the illegal act, became frightened and pulled away. Quickly, Pastor Jensen organized smaller vessels and loaded as many Jewish people as they could on the boats.
After loading the available vessels, they still needed space for 100 people. Pastor Jensen volunteered the church to harbor the rest while the boats made their journey. Shortly after, the Gestapo got word. The church was quickly surrounded by Nazis and all but one child was arrested. A note by Pastor Jensen captures his sadness.
October 5th, 1943 was a terrible day for all of Gilgalay. This was the day the German occupation forces carried out a raid looking for any Jews in the village. This was repeated during the following days, and many known and previously unknown Jews, estimated at 1,200 to 1,300, had taken refuge here, both in private houses and, unfortunately, also in the church loft and parish hall. Unluckily for us, the Gestapo and police forces stormed these premises. I, the undersigned parish priest, had been up in the loft on numerous occasions to help and give comfort in the desperate situation that had unfolded. Probably 100 Jews were taken to Horse Road Prison, from which they had since left. But for where?
Because of Denmark's courageous defiance of Hitler, 95% of its Jews survived the Holocaust. Nearly 20% of those survivors went through Pastor Jensen's church at Gilgalay. Looking back at World War II and the Holocaust, it's easy to see where the church missed opportunities to stand against the Nazi regime. But then there's people like Pastor Jensen, whose story shows us the impact we can have when the church fulfills its mission in the face of fear and adversity.